They taught you to be humble. They taught you to wait your turn. They taught you that thinking big about yourself is arrogance. And while you obediently listened, played by their rules, shrunk yourself to become appropriate, someone else stepped in, took your place, and never looked back. You wake up every morning, but before your feet even touch the floor, your mind has already started racing. You replay last night's conversation. You rewind something someone said 2 days ago. You analyze a look, a comment, a silence. And before the new day even truly begins, your head is already full of other people's opinions, other people's judgments, other people's expectations. You think you're tired because of work. But the truth is, you are not exhausted because of life. You are exhausted because of your own mind. And here is the brutal truth that almost nobody tells you directly. Your biggest enemy does not live outside of you. It lives inside you, in a version of yourself, a version that has become too comfortable, too safe, too addicted to the warm feeling of mediocrity. That version whispers to you at night, "You're not ready. Not the right time. Wait a little longer. What will other people think?" And you listened. You let that ghost make decisions for you. Little by little, silently, patiently. Self-betrayal rarely looks like betrayal. It disguises itself perfectly. It calls paralysis patience. It calls fear humility. It calls inaction maturity. And before you realize it, it has already started living your life for you. But today, that self-betrayal has to end. This video is not here to motivate you, not to comfort you, not to make you feel good. This is psychological surgery, and it will happen without anesthesia. If you want to keep playing the victim, you should turn this video off right now. But if you are tired of the cage you built yourself, if you are ready to break it, if you are ready to step into the small group of people who no longer sabotage themselves, then stay. The first truth that 99% of the crowd never realize is this: you are surrendering your weapons every single day, not through failure, not through lack of ability, but by leaking your energy into meaningless things. Most men talk too much, not because they have a lot to say, but because they fear silence. Silence makes them uncomfortable. And to fill that space, they talk. They over-explain because they are secretly seeking approval. They announce their plans because they need external validation to believe in themselves. But they fail to realize something extremely dangerous. Every time you talk too much, you are giving the world a detailed map of all your weaknesses. Every unnecessary word is a brick removed from your defensive wall. Every emotion you reveal without strategy is free intelligence for people who may use it against you. And then you wonder, why am I always manipulated? Why am I always underestimated? Why am I always pushed aside? The answer is brutal. You cannot become untouchable if you are completely easy to read. Weak people always crave attention, but they don't understand one thing. Attention is currency, and they are spending it like bankrupt people. Every time you react to a hater, you are paying them. Every time you step into meaningless drama, you are investing in something that gives no return. Every time you spend hours trying to craft the perfect response to disrespect, you are giving away your mental energy, your emotional bandwidth, and your time to people who bring absolutely no value to your life. You think caring more will make you more responsible. But the truth is, Overcaring does not make you stronger. It makes you smaller, slower, easier to disturb, and easier to control. And here is something few people dare to say. Procrastination is not a sign of intelligence. Overthinking is not depth. It is fear, disguised as logic. You are not frozen because the problem is too big. You are frozen because you want absolute emotional certainty before you dare to move. But life does not work that way. Your enemies don't need to be stronger than you. They don't need to be smarter than you. They only need to distract you long enough, and you will do the rest yourself. You will doubt yourself, overanalyze, self-sabotage, and eventually stop yourself. If there is one thing you should stop today, it is this: stop giving your power to other people. So right now, write this in the comments. I stopped giving my power to others, not to prove anything to anyone, but so that you can hear it. Niccolo Machiavelli, and those who truly understood power throughout history, all knew one cold truth. Silence is the sharpest weapon, and strategic indifference is armor that cannot be pierced. But the crowd does not understand this. They think silence makes them look weak. They think if they don't react, they lose. If they don't get the last word, they lose their position. But the truth is the complete opposite. Silence is the most aggressive move you can make. When someone attacks you with words and you respond, you have entered their game. You are playing by their rules, and you just gave them what they wanted most: a reaction. But when you don't react, the game stops immediately. Power shifts, and they are left behind, talking to themselves. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. Silence is presence. Silence is the psychological weight of someone who has nothing to prove, but everything to protect. Behavioral psychology shows something interesting. When you remove your reaction, the other person's brain begins to destabilize. Humans are wired to seek feedback, to seek closure, to seek reasons. And when they get nothing, their minds begin creating answers on their own. Your silence becomes an unsolved question, an invisible pressure, a void that makes them uncomfortable. You don't need revenge. You don't need to win arguments. You don't even need the last word. Your indifference is already the finishing move, and your absence is the greatest punishment. But to do this, you must build something very few people have: the armor of indifference. And understand this correctly. Indifference is not emotional numbness. Indifference is not coldness. Indifference is not a lack of care. Indifference means you completely control what is allowed to affect you. Most people live like emotional hostages. One insult ruins their entire week. One look changes their mood. One sentence destroys their focus. You must identify your own buttons. The things that make you angry. The things that make you defensive. The things that trigger automatic reactions. And you must become immune to them, to the point where they are no longer weaknesses. Because when no external factor can control your internal state anymore, you become impossible to manipulate, impossible to break, impossible to control. At that point, your silence is no longer suppression. It is a choice. The choice of someone who no longer needs to react to everything. The choice of someone who has mastered himself. The choice of a king. If you understand this, write in the comments: strategic indifference is my weapon. Not so others can see it, but so you can begin to live by it. The third principle of those who truly control the game is strategic ruthlessness in purifying their environment. And this is the conversation most men are never ready to face. The conversation about who and what must leave their life if they want to become the person they are capable of becoming. Not temporary distance, not reducing contact, but removal, decisive, permanent. No guilt, no farewell ceremony, no need for them to understand why. And here is a truth that comfortable philosophies will never tell you. Not every relationship is an asset. Many of them are liabilities. Anchors disguised as companions. Small holes in the boat you are trying to sail into the open ocean. The weak version of you will resist this. It will call it selfish, cold. It will remind you of memories, of the past, of emotions. But the person who no longer self-sabotages understands one thing. Sometimes emotions can also be weaponized to keep you where you are, to slow you down, to stop you from changing. Machiavellis said it very clearly. A ruler who surrounds himself with mediocre people will gradually become mediocre. Not because he is weak, but because environments are contagious. So you must look at your circle, without emotion, without illusion, without self-deception. Just one question. Are these people lifting you up? Or are they quietly keeping you where you are? Psychology calls this crab mentality, the crab bucket mentality. When one crab tries to climb out of the bucket, the others pull it back down. Not because they are evil, but because it is instinct. And human environments work the same way. The moment you begin to change, some people will start pulling you back, not always through opposition, but through discouragement, seemingly harmless comments, small jokes, concerned remarks, but enough to slowly wear down your confidence. And if you are honest with yourself, you know exactly who they are. You always knew. You just haven't dared to admit it. You cannot move forward if you keep people who constantly pull you back to your old self. You cannot fly if you are still carrying emotional lead weights. Some people don't need you to grow. They only need you to always be available, to absorb their emotions. Always present when they are in crisis, always listening, always rescuing them. But they never help you move forward. This is the hard truth to accept. Not everyone in your life belongs in your future. Removing these dead weights is not arrogance. It is self-preservation, a form of surgery. You are cutting away the things that are silently killing your speed because you begin to understand. Your time is limited. Your energy is limited. Your mental space is limited. And not everyone deserves a place there. When a relationship becomes a ceiling instead of a ladder, you stop negotiating. You stop explaining. You simply adjust your direction. With the cold clarity of someone who understands, their future is not up for negotiation. If you understand this, write in the comments, I remove all resistance without apology, not to appear strong, but to begin living like it. After you clean up your environment, a frightening moment will appear. You look around and realize something. No one is coming to save you. No one is investing in your vision. No one is pushing you when you are tired. And for 99% of people, this is where they collapse. This is where they begin to doubt. This is where they play the victim. But for the few who remain, this is not a tragedy. This is a purification ritual. The moment you realize you truly are alone. There is a very common lie. You need support to succeed. But there is another perspective few dare to say. Every form of support comes with a price. When you seek support, you also accept invisible debts. When someone helps you, a portion of your power belongs to them. When someone keeps you emotionally stable, they also gain the ability to destabilize you. What you call a safety net is sometimes just a spider web, and very few people realize they are being held inside it. If you don't depend on support, you don't need to submit. If nobody pulls you up, nobody can pull you down either. If you build alone, you keep full control. This is where you enter a very special phase, the ghost phase, the phase of becoming invisible. You no longer have an audience, and therefore, you no longer need to perform. You stop talking about your ambitions. You stop explaining your plans. You stop seeking early validation. Because you begin to understand, every time you speak too early, your internal pressure decreases. Every time you announce your plans, your action energy begins to leak away. So you keep everything inside. You let your goals create pressure from within until it becomes a physical force, a discomfort that won't let you stay still, a pressure that wakes you up at 2 a.m., while those still searching for motivation are still asleep. This is also when you learn to use a different kind of fuel, dark energy. When you are supported, you run on encouragement. But when you are alone, you must learn to run on something else. Pain, rejection, unanswered messages, moments of being underestimated, moments of being ignored. You don't deny them. You use them. You throw everything into the furnace of your mind and turn it into fuel. Don't run on sadness. Sadness makes you heavy, makes you slow, makes you want to stop. Run on determination instead. Because determination makes you sharper, faster, more focused. The dark parts inside you are not always your enemies. If you know how to use them, they become your engine. And in that darkness, you will have to do something very difficult. Destroy your dependence on motivation, because motivation is unstable. It comes fast, and it disappears just as fast. The people who truly go far do not rely on motivation. They rely on systems. Discipline is not glamorous, but it is terrifying. Because it is consistent. Because it is cold. You don't work because you feel like it. You work because it is your standard. You don't wait for inspiration. You show up every day. No negotiation, no compromise. At some point, you no longer decide every morning. You already decided once, at the deepest level of who you are. And from that moment, you simply execute. This is when you stop being someone who looks for motivation and become someone who operates a system. If you understand this, write in the comments, "I build my empire in silence," not to prove anything to anyone, but to remind yourself who you are becoming. We have reached the breaking point. All the silence, all the removal, all the discipline you just heard about will mean nothing if you don't take the final step. Identity transformation and the establishment of a standard that cannot be violated. This is where most people fail, because they try to change their behavior, but never change the person they believe they are. You cannot behave like a strong person if deep inside you still believe you are weak. You cannot live like a person of status if in your mind you are still the boy who was once underestimated. This is what few people understand about real change. It does not start with action. It starts with identity. True self-reconstruction, in the Machiavellian sense, is not a vision board, not positive affirmations, not visualizing success. It is psychological surgery. And sometimes, it is ruthless. Because you must be willing to do one thing: end your old version. The version the world is familiar with. The version that has played a role for so long. It forgot it was just a role. And here is the most important shift. Stop living by goals. Start living by standards. Goals live in the future. Standards live in the present. Goals are what you hope to reach. Standards are what you refuse to fall below. Right now. Today. In how you act. Standards decide everything. How you use your time. Who is allowed close to you. What energy you accept. What you refuse. And most importantly, what you accept from yourself. A man who truly has status does not wake up to chase goals. He wakes up to maintain his standards. The cold truth is, power is not given. It is taken by the one who decides in silence that they will no longer accept living below their potential. The world does not reward the obedient. The world responds to those who know how to position themselves. Most people who get taken advantage of are not weak. They simply fail to present their true value. They over-explain where silence was needed. They sell themselves short in small negotiations. They force a smile when calm indifference would have been enough. And here is the mechanism you must understand. How you see yourself determines how you present yourself. How you present yourself determines how the world responds to you. And how the world responds determines which doors open and which doors close. You don't walk into a room to be recognized. You walk in and become the standard of that room. You set boundaries. No explanations, no permission, no justification. And the world begins to understand. You are no longer someone who can be pushed back. And then something very interesting happens. Not magic, not spirituality, a very practical mechanism. When you truly change how you see yourself in a way that cannot be reversed, the world begins to reorganize itself. Opportunities that were once invisible start to appear. Doors that seemed closed were only waiting for someone confident enough to knock. People who belong to your old version naturally fall out of your life. And the resources that match your new standards begin to appear, not because of luck, but because you changed your position. The world does not change for those who merely wish. It changes for those who have decided who they are and what they will no longer tolerate. This is when you are no longer shaped by circumstances. You become the one shaping them, no longer reacting, now creating. You are no longer a product of your environment. You become the architect of yourself. If you understand this, write in the comments, "My standards are non-negotiable," not to appear strong, but to remind yourself you are not going back to who you used to be. Whatever you just heard is not philosophy for casual reflection. This is not content for you to nod at and then forget. This is a dismantling process. Dismantling false beliefs. Dismantling comfortable lies. The things that have kept you away from the person you could become. The person who entered this video a few minutes ago and the person reading these words now are not the same. You have seen a part of the truth, the nature of power, the strength of silence, the value of solitude, and the process of eliminating the most dangerous enemy, the weaker version of yourself. But remember one thing: inspiration without action is just entertainment, and you have been entertained long enough. Now, it is time to act. Do not wait until you feel ready, because feeling ready is just a story fear tells you to keep you standing still. The distance between understanding and becoming is always action, and no one decides that distance except you. So start. Even if it feels uncomfortable, even if nobody sees, even if nobody cheers, even if nobody understands. The weaker version of you may have found this channel by accident. But if you are still here, then maybe another part of you chose to stay. If you want to keep building that version, you already know what to do. Subscribe to the channel, not because of the algorithm, but because you refuse to go back to who you used to be. The path to becoming unshakable has only just begun. And if you want to mark this moment, leave a commitment in the comments. I am no longer who they remember. I am who I decide to become. Not for others, just for you. And from this point forward, don't talk too much about what you will do. Just begin. Silently, consistently, without announcements, and let the results speak for you.